"Get out of my house, I dare you." Those were the words that split my life clean in two, the kind of words that echo long after they're spoken, like the ring of a cracked bell. I'd always imagined that cruelty from a stranger would sting less than from family, but nothing prepares you for the moment your own flesh and blood stands by, silent. While you're told you're no longer welcome in the home you helped build. That Thursday morning in November, at exactly 8:10 a.m., I learned what it meant to be truly invisible. The coffee in my mug trembled as I gripped it tighter, trying to steady my hands. Zariah's voice cut through the kitchen air like a knife, her manicured finger pointing toward the front door as if banishing a servant. "Get out, Thelma. I'm done pretending." She stood there in her silk robe, the diamond ring on her hand catching the light like a small, cruel star. Across the counter, my son, my Wesley, stood scrolling through his phone as if none of this concerned him. I said his name softly. "Wesley, please. Say something." He barely looked up. "Mom, you know how Zariah gets in the mornings? Maybe just give her space. Give her space. In the house I'd bought for them with the last of my savings. I'd moved in 3 years earlier, after my husband Harold passed away. The mortgage on our home had swallowed me whole, and Wesley and Zariah had offered me a place to stay. It'll be good for everyone," she'd said back then, smiling sweetly. Families should take care of each other. But somewhere along the line, that promise had soured. My room, once theirs to offer, became the guest room. My opinions became inconveniences. My help became mistakes. That morning, all I'd done was try to make breakfast. The eggs had shells in them. The toast was a little burnt. "You call this helping?" Zariah laughed, cold and sharp. "You're nothing but a burden. Thelma, a useless old woman who can't even boil water without making a mess." Her words hit me harder than I'd expected. I wasn't perfect lately. I had been forgetting small things, where I left my keys, whether I'd taken my morning pills, but the way she said it, as if my age had turned me into a child, burned deep into my chest. "I raised 4 children alone after their father died," I said quietly. "I think I can manage a little burnt toast." Zariah smirked. "That was 40 years ago. You're not that woman anymore." Wesley finally looked up again, his voice softer now. "Mom, maybe she's right. You've been having trouble lately. Remember when you forgot the pot roast in the oven?" I remembered. It had been a surprise dinner for them. I'd left the stove on after helping a neighbor find her cat. The smoke alarm had screamed through the house, and Zariah had made me scrub the blackened pan while she ordered takeout. That night, I'd gone to bed feeling small. This morning, I felt something different, tired, but steady. "I'll pack my things," I said, my voice calm in a way that frightened even me. Zariah blinked. "Good," she said quickly, "and don't come crawling back when you realize you can't survive on your own. Some people need to learn the hard way." Her tone was smug, triumphant. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy, each breath shallow. My small room looked emptier than ever. I folded my clothes with precision, as if control over fabric could make up for the chaos in my heart. On my nightstand sat an old photo Wesley at 10 years old, smiling, missing a front tooth. I'd given him $5 under his pillow that night, money I couldn't spare, but worth every cent just to see that grin. That boy was gone. 20 minutes later, I rolled my suitcase into the foyer. Wesley was nowhere to be found. Zariah sat at the counter painting her nails, humming. "Leaving so soon," she said, without looking up. "I thought you'd at least beg a little." I reached into my purse and set a small folded note on the hall table beside Wesley's keys. "What's that?" she asked, her voice suddenly wary. "Just a note." I didn't look back. The cold November air met me like a baptism as I stepped outside. My suitcase wheels clacked softly against the concrete, each sound a small declaration of freedom. When I reached my car, my phone felt like a weight in my hand. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I hadn't called in months. "Margaret," I said when she answered. "It's Thelma. I need that favor we talked about." There was a pause, then her voice warm, steady, familiar. Of course. Honey, what's wrong? I looked up at the house one last time, at the silhouette of Zariah in the kitchen window, holding the note I'd left behind. I'll explain when I get there, I said quietly. But Margaret, don't tell anyone where I am. Because Zariah had no idea what she'd just unleashed, and she was about to find out that some old women have far more fight left in them than anyone imagines. The phone started ringing before I'd even finished setting my suitcase down in Margaret's spare room, and by 10:40 a.m., it had rattled itself across the coffee table twice. Let it go to voicemail, Margaret said as she pressed a cup of tea into my hands, the kind of steady gesture that says I'm with you, whatever this is. Through her living room window, the neighborhood moved like any other Tuesday, someone walking a dog, a delivery van humming by while inside me, the world I knew felt like it had been tipped on its edge. When the buzzing finally stopped, only to start again 5 seconds later, she tilted her head. At least see who's calling. I didn't need to. They want to know what I wrote in that note, I said, feeling a strange calm settle in my chest. I told them thank you for showing me exactly where I stand. Don't look for me. Margaret lifted an eyebrow. Simple, sharp. No wonder they're panicking. By 11:05 a.m., the panic had a voice. Wesley first, then Zariah, then a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them until Zariah's name lit the screen again, and Margaret tapped the speaker icon with a decisive finger. Hello? Thelma. Zariah cooed, all honey and gauze. Thank God you answered. We've been worried sick. Where are you? Sweetheart, sweetheart. A word she'd never once used until there was something to lose. I'm safe, I said, keeping my voice level. She inhaled, then softened further. I'm so sorry about this morning. I was stressed about Wesley's promotion and I took it out on you. Can you forgive me? Margaret scribbled on a notepad, keep her talking, and slid it toward me. I'm not ready to come back, I said. There was the smallest crack in Zariah's tone. Honey, you need your medications, and Dr. Peterson's office called about your appointment tomorrow. You know how important your treatment is. I stared at the phone as if it had sprouted wings. What treatment, I asked. What appointment? The silence that followed was the kind that gives everything away. When she spoke again, the syrup was gone from her voice. Thelma, you're not thinking clearly. You've been having episodes forgetting your pills, getting lost at the store. People with dementia often don't realize they're having problems. Margaret's pen pressed hard enough to nearly tear the paper. She's gaslighting you. I felt heat rise in my throat and said, very quietly, I managed my life for 60 years without your reminders. I'm fine. Of course you think you are, she murmured, and the call ended with a click as crisp as a slap. At 11:40 a.m., the unknown number called again. Mrs. Holloway, James Mitchell with Mitchell and Associates. A man's voice said, professional, grave. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. My pulse lurched. Harold's estate attorney. I'm here. Papers ruffled on his end. We've located additional assets connected to your late husband property in Montana held in trust since 1998 with mineral rights. A petroleum company has made a substantial offer for drilling rights, an initial payment of $450,000, plus royalties that could reach several $100,000 more over the next decade, depending on production. The room tilted. Margaret's hand found my forearm and anchored it. How? How could Harold not have known? I whispered. Our records suggest he may never have fully realized the trust transferred into his name. Mitchell said, but Mrs. Holloway, there's something else. 3 days ago, your daughter-in-law called our office. She claimed to be acting on your behalf due to health issues and asked that all correspondence be sent to her address. I closed my eyes, seeing the hall table at 42 Pine Street, the neat stacks of mail Zariah offered to organize for me. I never authorized that. I said, I suspected as much. Mitchell replied gently. She also asked detailed questions about guardianship in cases of cognitive decline, then followed up last week with a purported power of attorney that, frankly, looks forged. My tea had gone cold. The radiator hummed at 11:58 a.m., steady and indifferent. While an invisible machine clicked into focus in my mind, months of intercepted letters, rehearsed concern at doctor's visits she insisted on attending. The way my friends' calls had dwindled as Zariah answered my phone with that practiced sigh. "They're building a narrative," I said, the words tasting like iron. "They were," Mitchell corrected, and I could hear the spine in his voice. "Now that I've spoken to you, I'll notify the petroleum company that all communications go through me and me alone. There is a decision deadline of December 1st, and I intend to secure your interests immediately." He paused, then added, "One more thing, someone claiming to be your son called the petroleum company yesterday to expedite paperwork. They were referred back to my office." The last shaky piece slid into place, and the world steadied in a new, harder truth. "Thank you," I told him. "When can we meet this afternoon? 3 p.m., he said. "Bring a trusted witness." I looked at Margaret. She nodded once. I ended the call, set the phone down, and stared at my reflection in the dark window, a woman I recognized again. "They plan to make me disappear on paper," I said. Margaret's eyes flashed. "Then let's make you appear in person, outside." Wind fretted the sycamores. Inside, I felt something unfamiliar and electric gather in my chest. It wasn't rage. It was resolve. And when my phone lit with Wesley's name at 12:06 p.m., I knew exactly how much truth I was ready to speak. I didn't answer Wesley's call right away. I sat there staring at his name on the screen, watching it pulse with every ring, the same way his tiny heartbeat had pulsed under my palm when he was a baby. The memory cut me in half. At 12:10 p.m., the ringing stopped. A text followed Mom. "Please call me. Zariah is losing it. We just need to talk." I turned the phone face down and exhaled. "He's scared," Margaret said quietly. "Good," I replied. "He should be." By 2:45 p.m., we were sitting in the paneled waiting room of James Mitchell's office downtown, surrounded by the faint scent of old paper and brass polish. Margaret squeezed my hand as the receptionist ushered us in. Mitchell was the sort of man whose handshake was both warm and firm, someone who'd spent decades learning to read truth from trembling voices. "Mrs. Holloway, Miss Barrett," he greeted us. "I'm glad you came." He opened a thick file on his desk, its contents neatly tabbed in color-coded folders. After our call, I reviewed all correspondence and phone records. "What I found confirms your suspicions." He slid a document across the table. "This is the forged power of attorney your daughter-in-law submitted. I've compared the signature to verified samples of yours." I stared at my name written in elegant loops I'd never drawn. "It's not mine," I said. "I know," he replied. "The notary seal is fraudulent, and the witnesses listed don't exist." He continued, flipping through pages like a surgeon revealing one wound after another. "Here's the first call from Zariah, August 17th. 2 days after we sent the initial inheritance notice, she claimed you were struggling with memory loss and asked to manage your mail. The date hit me like a slap. That was the day after she helped me organize the closet," I whispered. Mitchell nodded gravely. "She also contacted the petroleum company last week, claiming to represent you. Fortunately, they followed protocol and referred her back here." He leaned back, studying me over steepled fingers. "Mrs. Holloway, I've seen elder financial abuse cases before, but this one is meticulous. If you hadn't reached out, she might have succeeded." For a moment, the air thickened with silence. Margaret's hand found mine again. "So what happens now?" she asked. "First, we secure the estate," Mitchell said. "I'll notify all parties that any prior authorizations are invalid and that you are the sole decision-maker. Second, we'll file a fraud report with the district attorney's office, forging legal documents, intercepting mail. These are felonies." His gaze softened. "But you need to be sure. Mrs. Holloway, pursuing charges means confronting your family in court." I thought of Zariah's cold smile, of Wesley's distracted silence as she humiliated me. Then I remembered Harold's calloused hands, the years we'd spent scraping by so our children would never have to. They started this war. I said steadily. I'm just ending it. Mitchell's eyes glinted with something that looked like respect. Then let's make sure you win. When we left his office at 4:10 p.m., the late autumn light was fading into the gold of early evening. The city hummed softly, unaware that my entire world had shifted again, but this time in my favor. In the car. Margaret turned to me. You're quiet. I smiled faintly, just thinking how strange it feels to have power again. She laughed under her breath. Welcome back to yourself. That night, at 7:45 p.m., Wesley called again. This time, I answered. His voice was frantic. Mom, thank God, where are you? Zariah's been crying all day. I'm sure she has, I said evenly. Mom, come on, don't do this. You can't just disappear. You mean I can't disappear without your permission? I could hear his breath catch. We're worried. You've been confused lately, forgetting things. I closed my eyes, listening to the rehearsed concern in his tone. Wesley, I said softly, when did you start believing I was losing my mind? He hesitated. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Silence. Zariah said Dr. Peterson thought I cut him off. When was the last time you spoke to Dr. Peterson yourself? Another silence. Longer this time. You didn't, did you? She handled it. My words landed heavy, undeniable. She's been lying to you. Wesley. She forged documents, called lawyers, told people I was incompetent. She tried to steal my inheritance. That's impossible, he said, but his voice cracked. We were just trying to help you. I almost laughed. Help me. By locking me in that house, cutting me off from friends, treating me like a child, he stammered. Mom, please. You don't understand. No, I said quietly. You don't. I thought of the boy who once cried when he scraped his knee, how I'd kissed the bruise and said, pain teaches you where your limits are. Maybe it still could. I've spoken to the lawyer, Wesley. I know everything. The forged documents, the phone calls, the fake diagnosis. There was a sharp intake of breath. She told me you asked her to manage things until you got better, he whispered. You believed her. I said simply, and that's how she controlled us both. The line went silent, except for his uneven breathing. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked out the window where the moon hung pale and unflinching. I'm going to take back what's mine. The next morning at 8:30 a.m., I stood outside the house I'd once called home. The November air bit at my cheeks, sharp with the smell of wet leaves and distant chimney smoke. Margaret was beside me, silent but steady. I could see the curtains twitch from inside. They'd been waiting. My heart thudded slow and hard against my ribs, not fear exactly, more like a gathering of everything I'd swallowed for 3 years. You sure you're ready for this? Margaret whispered. I'd been ready since the day she told me I was useless, I said. Before I could reach for the doorbell, the door swung open. Zariah stood there in a silk robe, eyes rimmed red as if she'd been crying or practicing looking like she had. Thelma, she breathed, clutching her chest. Thank God, we've been so worried. Wesley hasn't slept. Come in, please, let's talk. She reached for me like an actress on cue, but I stepped back, her hand falling short. We'll talk, I said, and walked past her into the living room. The air smelled of lavender candles and desperation. Wesley appeared from the hallway, his face pale, unshaven, eyes sunken with guilt. Mom, he said softly, you came. I did, I replied, setting my purse carefully on the table. And I'm not staying long. Zariah's voice fluttered nervously. Let's all just calm down. We can work this out. I know I said terrible things that morning. I was under so much stress, money. The house, Wesley's job, it got to me. I turned to her slowly. You said I was a burden, that I wouldn't last a week without you. Her lips parted, but no sound came. You might have been right, I said, but I'm still here. And now we need to discuss what you've been doing behind my back. For a flicker of a second, something cold flashed in her eyes. I don't know what you mean. Then let's refresh your memory. I reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of papers bound neatly with a clip. "This," I said, sliding the first page toward her, "is the letter from my husband's attorney. It was mailed to this address in August. I never saw it." "You did." Her hand twitched, but she didn't move to pick it up. I laid down another page. "This is a log of phone calls you made to that law office over the following weeks, 15 in total claiming to represent me." Wesley frowned. "Zariah." "She's lying." Zariah snapped, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. I took out one more paper, the forged power of attorney, and placed it on the table between us. "This is your signature, isn't it?" Wesley leaned closer, confusion twisting his face. "What is this, a fake?" I said. "She forged my name to gain control of my estate. The notary's stamp is false. The witnesses don't exist." I turned to Zariah. "Tell him." She laughed, brittle and wild. "This is insane." "You're confused. Thelma, you've been enough." My voice came out calm, but it cut through her like a blade. "If I'm confused, then explain why the petroleum company received a call from someone claiming to be Wesley, trying to rush the drilling contract. Explain how you knew about the inheritance before I did." Zariah froze. The silence that followed was almost holy. Wesley stared between us, realization dawning like a slow sunrise. "You knew?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zariah's mask cracked. "Fine," she spat, her sweetness gone. "I knew. And yes, I made some calls. I was trying to protect this family. You think she would have known what to do with that kind of money? She'd give it all away to charity, to neighbors, to stray cats for all I know." She turned on me, her voice rising. "You don't even know how to use online banking. Thelma, you'd lose it in a week." Her words should have stung, but they didn't. They sounded small now, like a child yelling to drown out the truth. "You're right," I said softly. "I'm old-fashioned, but I've never stolen. I've never lied. And I've never destroyed someone's dignity to feed my own greed." Wesley stepped back from her slowly, as if seeing her for the first time. "You forged my mother's signature," he said, disbelief shaking through him. "You lied to me about her health, about Dr. Peterson." Zariah's voice broke into a shriek. "I did it for you, for us. She was going to ruin everything. She's my mother," Wesley said, and something in his tone made the room go still. I reached into my purse one last time and placed a card on the table. "James Mitchell, attorney at law," I said. "He's already filed reports with the district attorney's office. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse. They'll be in touch soon." The color drained from her face. "You can't prove I can." I said simply, "Phone logs, handwriting analysis, recorded calls. It's over." "Zariah." For a long, suspended second, nobody moved. Then Wesley straightened, his jaw hard. "Get out," he said quietly. "Wesley, get out." His voice cracked like thunder in the small room. "Pack your things and leave this house. Now." She looked at him, searching for weakness, but found none. With a sound halfway between a sob and a snarl, she stormed upstairs. The slam of the bedroom door echoed through the house like the closing of a chapter. Wesley turned to me, his eyes wet. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I wanted to believe she—" I reached out and placed a hand on his cheek. "You were blind, not cruel," I said softly. "But don't ever mistake silence for love again." Outside, the air smelled of rain. Inside, the storm had finally broken. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was the reckoning before the calm. 6 months later, the world felt quiet again, quiet in the way healing feels after chaos. When the noise has finally burned itself out, I stood in my little kitchen at 8 a.m., sunlight spilling across the countertop, a mug in my hand that read, "World's Best Grandma." Wesley had given it to me the week before Mother's Day. Through the window, I could see the community garden below, rows of tomato plants glinting with dew, tended by women who, like me, had learned that life doesn't end when people decide you're past your prime. It begins again, differently, stronger. The apartment wasn't much 2 bedrooms. 1 bath, creaky floors, but it was mine. Every photo on the wall, every curtain, every color was a decision I made for myself. After Zariah's arrest, after the months of depositions and hearings, freedom had stopped feeling like an idea and started feeling like air. That morning, my phone buzzed. Margaret's name lit the screen. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked. "No greeting needed. Nervous," I admitted, but ready. Today was Zariah's sentencing. The district attorney had called it one of the clearest cases of elder financial abuse they'd seen in years. Forgery, fraud, attempted theft, each charge like a brick she'd built her own prison with. I'd told Mitchell I didn't need to be there, but he said my presence would matter. People need to see that victims of this kind of crime can stand tall, he told me. So I put on my best navy dress, brushed my silver hair into place, and waited for Wesley. When the doorbell rang at 9:20 a.m., he stood there looking older than 35, but somehow lighter too. The stress that used to live in his face was gone. "You ready?" he asked softly. "As I'll ever be." We didn't talk much on the drive. The courthouse was 20 minutes away, but it felt longer. Time stretching with all the things we didn't need to say. The betrayal between us had built a wall, but we were chipping at it, one honest moment at a time. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and paper. Wesley and I sat together in the second row behind the prosecutor's table when they brought Zara in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her wrists cuffed. She looked small, like a shadow of the woman who once ruled every room she entered. I'd wondered if seeing her like this would bring satisfaction. It didn't. It brought something quieter, relief. The judge was a woman in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. When she spoke, her voice carried authority shaped by decades of listening to excuses. "Mrs. Holloway," she began, addressing Zariah, "you have pleaded guilty to multiple felonies involving fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you wish to say?" Zariah stood, shoulders rigid. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steadier than I expected. I never intended to hurt anyone. My actions were motivated by concern for my family's future. I wanted to ensure the money was handled responsibly, even here, even now. She couldn't tell the truth. The judge's expression didn't change. What you call concern, I call exploitation. You manipulated, deceived, and gaslighted a vulnerable woman who trusted you. You orchestrated a campaign to strip her of her independence and dignity for your own gain. The room went still. Elder abuse, the judge continued, is among the most insidious crimes we see, precisely because it hides behind words like love and family. I hereby sentence you to 3 years in state prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. You will pay restitution for legal fees and court costs, and you are permanently barred from handling the financial affairs of any senior citizen. Zariah didn't look at me until the bailiff took her arm. When she finally did, her eyes weren't angry. They were hollow. I saw a woman who had gambled everything on greed and lost. I nodded once, not in triumph, but in closure. Some lessons come too late. Outside, the day was bright, almost offensively so. Wesley and I stood on the courthouse steps, unsure what to say. He spoke first. "How do you feel, Free?" I said simply, "And you?" He took a deep breath, tired, but better. I needed to see it through. He looked at me, eyes wet. "Mom, do you think you'll ever forgive me, really forgive me?" I studied his face, the same one I'd watched sleep in a crib 30 years ago, and thought carefully. Forgiveness isn't a door. Wesley, it's a road. We're walking it, one day at a time. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I love you." "Mom, I know," I said softly, "and I love you too." That was never the question. That evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and my laptop. Yes, my laptop. I'd finally learned to use one. I opened a new document and began typing a letter to Harold. "I wish you could see me now." I wrote, "You always said I was stronger than I knew. Turns out, you were right." I paused. watching the sun dip below the rooftops, the sky painted in soft gold. I'm happy. Harold, truly happy. I've learned that home isn't a place or a person, it's peace, and I've found mine. When I hit save, I closed the computer and breathed in the quiet. The inheritance had brought me more than money, it had brought me back to myself. Tomorrow, I'd be at the garden again, hands in the dirt, laughter around me, life still blooming where I'd once thought it ended. If my story reached you, remember this: no matter who tries to silence you, you're never too old to start over, never too broken to begin again. If you believe that too, hit like, share this story, and subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my place?